What if a bunch of guys in a factory town in England accidentally invented a whole new kind of scary movie, but with guitars instead of cameras? Some songs aren't just tunes, they're moments in time that changed everything that came after them. You won't believe the story behind the song that basically created the sound of a thunderstorm indoors. 1. Black Sabbath. It's the late 1962nd, and popular music is all about peace, love, and flower power. Bands were singing happy songs about going to California, but in the gloomy industrial city of Birmingham, England, 4 guys had a totally different idea. The local movie theater was showing a scary movie, and people were lining up, paying good money to be frightened. The band's bass player, Geezer Butler, had a wild thought. What if they started making scary music? Why weren't bands doing that? And so they did. The result was the song Black Sabbath, from their first album, also called Black Sabbath. From the very first second, you know something is different. You hear rain and a distant, lonely bell. Then, guitarist Tony Iommi plays 3 slow, heavy, and downright spooky notes. It's a musical interval known as the tritone, which for centuries was nicknamed the Devil's Interval because it sounded so unsettling. It was the musical equivalent of a jump scare in a horror film. On top of that, singer Ozzy Osbourne wails a terrifying story about a dark figure in black appearing before him. Truth be told, this was it. This was the moment heavy metal was born. Before this song there was hard rock and blues rock, but nothing had this specific combination of slowness, heaviness, and pure doom. It was a sound that felt heavy, like the giant machines the band members had worked with in local factories. The song single-handedly created the blueprint for a new genre. It proved that music could be dark, slow, and powerful, not just fast and fun. They had built the foundation. But while Sabbath created the spooky sound, they hadn't yet created the look or the attitude that would define metalheads for generations. That would take another band to turn this dark art into a full-blown uniform of rebellion. 2. Breaking the Law. After Black Sabbath opened the door to darkness, a whole wave of British bands rushed through it. This movement was called the New Wave of British Heavy Metal, or the NWoB for short. These bands were faster and more aggressive than what came before. But one band, Judas Priest, did something more. They didn't just define the sound, they defined the look. While Sabbath looked like 4 regular guys, Judas Priest, led by their powerhouse singer Rob Halford, started dressing in head-to-toe leather and chrome studs. It was a look they borrowed from biker culture, and it instantly became the official uniform for metal fans everywhere. Their 1980 album, British Steel, was a massive statement, and on it was a song so simple, so catchy, and so powerful it became an instant anthem. Breaking the Law. The song kicks off with one of the most recognizable guitar riffs in history, a sharp, driving, and incredibly simple pattern. The whole song is short, clocking in at under 3 minutes, and it's pure distilled rebellion. The lyrics talk about feeling frustrated, unemployed, and fed up with the world, a feeling many young people in England had at the time. Here's the key part. The song was made for chanting along with. The chorus is just the title repeated over and over. It was simple, direct, and aggressive. Judas Priest proved that metal could be more than just long, complicated songs about wizards and demons. It could be a short, sharp shock to the system, an anthem for the streets. They took Sabbath's dark sound, gave it a tough guy look, and created a rallying cry for a generation of headbangers. They made metal accessible and gave it an identity. Priest had established the look and the anthem, but another British band was about to take the speed and raw energy to a whole new level, mixing in the frantic power of another angry style of music. 3. Ace of Spades. If Judas Priest put metal in a leather jacket, Motorhead dragged it through the dirt, kicked it a few times, and threw it on stage. Led by the legendary frontman Lemmy Kilmister, whose gravelly voice sounded like he gargled with whiskey and nails, Motorhead was a different kind of beast. They were a bridge between two rebellious worlds, the raw, fast, and messy energy of punk rock and the loud, powerful sound of heavy metal. Lemmy always just called it rock and roll, but what they created was something much more intense. In 1980, the same year Priest gave us British Steel, Motorhead unleashed Ace of Spades. The song doesn't fade in or build up, it just explodes. It starts with Lemmy's distorted, overdriven bass riff, which sounds more like a rhythm guitar, and then the drums and guitar crash in like a runaway train. It's pure, unfiltered adrenaline. The song is unbelievably fast for its time, a frantic shuffle that never lets up for 2 minutes and 49 seconds. Lemmy's lyrics are all about gambling and living life on the edge, delivered in his signature growl that was less about hitting perfect notes and more about pure attitude. The mind-blowing part of Ace of Spades is how it blended two sounds. It had the speed and the don't care attitude of punk, but the musical muscle and loudness of metal. It showed a generation of musicians that you didn't have to choose. You could be fast and heavy. Many of the thrash metal bands that would come later, like Metallica, pointed directly to Motorhead as a key inspiration. They weren't as polished as Priest or as doomy as Sabbath. They were raw, dirty, and loud. Motorhead had injected a dose of pure chaotic speed into metal's veins. But another band from the same scene would take that energy and turn it into something more epic, with galloping rhythms and complex guitar harmonies. 3. Ace of Spades. If Judas Priest put metal in a leather jacket, Motorhead dragged it through the dirt, kicked it a few times, and threw it on stage. Led by the legendary frontman Lemmy Kilmister, whose gravelly voice sounded like he gargled with whiskey and nails, Motorhead was a different kind of beast. They were a bridge between two rebellious worlds, the raw, fast, and messy energy of punk rock and the loud, powerful sound of heavy metal. Lemmy always just called it rock and roll, but what they created was something much more intense. In 1980, the same year Priest gave us British Steel, Motorhead unleashed Ace of Spades. The song doesn't fade in or build up, it just explodes. It starts with Lemmy's distorted, overdriven bass riff, which sounds more like a rhythm guitar, and then the drums and guitar crash in like a runaway train. It's pure, unfiltered adrenaline. The song is unbelievably fast for its time, a frantic shuffle that never lets up for 2 minutes and 49 seconds. Lemmy's lyrics are all about gambling and living life on the edge, delivered in his signature growl that was less about hitting perfect notes and more about pure attitude. The mind-blowing part of Ace of Spades is how it blended two sounds. It had the speed and the don't care attitude of punk, but the musical muscle and loudness of metal. It showed a generation of musicians that you didn't have to choose. You could be fast and heavy. Many of the thrash metal bands that would come later, like Metallica, pointed directly to Motorhead as a key inspiration. They weren't as polished as Priest or as doomy as Sabbath. They were raw, dirty, and loud. Motorhead had injected a dose of pure chaotic speed into metal's veins. But another band from the same scene would take that energy and turn it into something more epic, with galloping rhythms and complex guitar harmony. 4. The Trooper. While Motorhead was playing loud and fast in smoky clubs, another band from the new wave of British heavy metal was taking things in a more epic and ambitious direction. That band was Iron Maiden. Led by bassist and main songwriter Steve Harris, Maiden wasn't just about a single riff or a raw feeling. They were about storytelling. They wrote songs about history, literature, and mythology, creating musical worlds that you could get lost in. And their secret weapon was a sound that would become their signature: the gallop. This sound was perfected on their 1983 classic, The Trooper. The song tells the story of a British soldier charging into a doomed battle during the Crimean War. It starts with one of the most iconic guitar harmonies ever written. Guitarists Dave Murray and Adrian Smith play interlocking melodies that sound like a heroic trumpet call, immediately setting a scene of high drama. Then, the song kicks into Steve Harris's famous bass line, a driving, rhythmic pattern that sounds exactly like a horse galloping into battle. It's a sound that makes you want to pump your fist in the air. The genius of the Trooper is how it combines this rhythmic intensity with incredible musical skill. Bruce Dickinson's vocals soar over the top like an air raid siren, telling the tragic story from the soldier's point of view. The song is famous for its intricate dual guitar solos, where Murray and Smith trade off playing lightning-fast and melodic licks. Iron Maiden proved that heavy metal could be intelligent, complex, and theatrical. They were more than just loud, they were musical storytellers. Maiden had made metal epic and heroic. But back in America, a legendary singer who had just left Black Sabbath was about to team up with a young guitar prodigy who would change the way the instrument was played forever. 5. Crazy Train. After being fired from Black Sabbath, Ozzy Osbourne's career could have been over. Many people thought he was finished. But then, he did something nobody expected. He launched a solo career that was just as, if not more, successful. The secret to his incredible comeback was a young, brilliant American guitarist he discovered named Randy Rhoads. Rhoads was a game-changer. He grew up playing heavy rock, but he was also a serious student of classical music. He brought a level of technical skill and musical theory to metal that was mind-blowing at the time. The perfect showcase for this new partnership was Crazy Train, the first single from Ozzy's debut solo album. The song opens with one of the most famous and powerful guitar riffs in rock history. It's a driving, chugging rhythm that instantly grabs you. Ozzy's voice, as unique as ever, sings about the madness of the Cold War era and the state of the world. The song is catchy, heavy, and has a huge chorus that was perfect for big arenas. But here's what made it a defining moment: the guitar solo. In the middle of the song, Randy Rhoads unleashes a solo that sounded like nothing else on the radio. It wasn't just fast, it was incredibly precise, melodic, and complex. He used techniques inspired by classical composers, like tapping with both hands on the fretboard and using musical scales that were not common in rock music. He made the guitar sing and scream in a way that was both aggressive and beautiful. Randy Rhoads and Crazy Train created the blueprint for the guitar hero. He inspired millions of kids to pick up a guitar and not just learn chords, but to practice scales and master their instrument. Ozzy and Randy had made the guitar player a star. But in the underground, young musicians inspired by Motorhead and Iron Maiden were about to take metal to a new level of speed and aggression, creating a whole new subgenre in the process. 7. Raining Blood. If Metallica was the brainy, sophisticated leader of the thrash metal scene, then Slayer was its evil, chaotic twin. While other bands sang about war or social problems, Slayer dove headfirst into the darkest subjects imaginable, creating a sound to match. They were all about pushing boundaries. Their goal seemed to be to create the fastest, heaviest, and most intense music humanly possible. In 1986, the same year Metallica released Master of Puppets, Slayer unleashed their own masterpiece, Rain in Blood, an album so relentless it's over in less than 29 minutes. The album's closing track, Raining Blood, is Slayer's defining moment and one of the most iconic songs in all of extreme music. It begins with one of the most terrifying openings in metal history, a slow, clean guitar riff that uses dissonant, clashing notes, soon joined by a second guitar, to create a truly evil harmony. This builds tension before the song erupts into absolute sonic chaos. The drums, played by the legendary Dave Lombardo, are a furious storm of pounding beats and lightning-fast fills. The guitar riffs from Jeff Hanneman and Kerry King are a blur of speed and aggression. What made Raining Blood so important was its sheer, unapologetic extremity. It felt like the sound of the world ending. The song's most famous part is a section in the middle where the tempo slows down to a heavy, crushing groove before the guitars unleash a series of screaming, atonal solos that sound more like panic noises than traditional melodies. It was pure musical chaos, and it was glorious. Slayer took the speed of thrash metal and stripped away almost all of the melody, leaving behind pure, raw sonic force. They opened the door for even more extreme forms of metal to come. Slayer had taken metal to its fastest and most chaotic point. But as the 80-second ended, A new generation of bands would take that heaviness and slow it way, way down, creating a powerful new feel based on pure attitude. 8. Walk. As the 1992nd began, the flashy style of 80-second metal was starting to feel a little dated. A new sound was bubbling up from the underground, a sound that was less about speed and more about power and attitude. Out of Texas came a band called Pantera, and they were about to change the game. They started as a glam metal band, but they completely reinvented themselves, creating a new style that would become known as groove metal, and their anthem was a song called Walk. Walk is a song built around one of the simplest, yet heaviest guitar riffs ever created. The guitarist, who went by the name Dimebag Darrell, had a unique and powerful sound. His guitar tone was sharp and aggressive, like a swarm of angry bees. The main riff of Walk is not fast or complicated. It's a slow, stomping, and incredibly heavy groove that just repeats, getting more intense each time. It's a riff that is so powerful it feels like a physical punch to the chest. It makes you want to nod your head, not bang it in a frantic circle. The whole song is pure, unfiltered attitude. Singer Phil Anselmo barks the lyrics with raw aggression, famously telling people to walk on home, boy if they show him disrespect. The message was simple: don't mess with us. What people miss is this key detail. The song's power comes from its use of space. The riff isn't a constant stream of notes. It's a rhythmic pattern with pauses in between, which makes each hit of the riff feel even heavier. Pantera proved that you didn't need to be the fastest band in the world to be the heaviest. They shifted the focus of heavy music from pure speed to pure, undeniable groove. Pantera had created the ultimate groove metal anthem. But in the dark underground, other musicians were taking the intensity of bands like Slayer and combining it with a new level of musical complexity, creating a brutal yet highly technical form of extreme music. 9. Symbolic. While Pantera was bringing groove to the masses, a much darker and more intense style of music called death metal was growing in the Florida underground. This style took the speed and aggression of thrash and added guttural, growling vocals and lyrics that often focused on dark and morbid themes. At the very center of this scene was a band called Death, led by a visionary guitarist and songwriter named Chuck Schuld in Ur. Chuck wasn't just about being brutal. He was a master musician who was constantly pushing his own limits. By the mid-92nd, Chuck had evolved the sound of Death from raw, brutal aggression into something incredibly sophisticated. His 1995 album, Symbolic, is considered by many to be one of the greatest metal albums of all time. The title track, Symbolic, is the perfect example of this evolution. The song is still incredibly heavy and fast, with blast beat drumming and Chuck's signature high-pitched growl. But underneath the aggression is a stunning level of musicality. The genius of Symbolic is in its beautiful and complex guitar melodies. Chuck and his fellow guitarist would weave intricate, soaring harmonies over the top of the chaotic drumming and heavy riffs. The song is full of beautiful, almost classical-sounding guitar solos that are both lightning fast and incredibly emotional. Chuck's lyrics had also evolved, moving away from simple horror themes to more philosophical and personal ideas about life, memory, and innocence. Symbolic proved that death metal could be more than just noise. It could be intelligent, emotional, and musically breathtaking. Chuck Schuld in Ur is often called the father of death metal. And with this song, he showed that his creation could be a true art form. Death had shown that extreme music could be beautiful and complex. But across the ocean in Europe, other bands were taking the melody of classic metal and making it faster, happier, and more uplifting than ever before. 10. I Want Out. While American metal was getting heavier and groovier, a different sound was exploding in Europe, especially in Germany. This new genre was called power metal. It took the dual guitar harmonies of Iron Maiden, the speed of Judas Priest, and mixed it with a sense of fun and melody that was almost like pop music. Instead of being dark and angry, power metal was often fast, upbeat, and hopeful. The band that basically invented this sound was Helloween. their 1988 album, Keeper of the Seven Keys. Part 2 is the Bible of power metal, and on it is the genre's most perfect anthem, I Want Out. The song is pure, joyful energy. It kicks off with a catchy, instantly memorable guitar riff and quickly ramps up to a fast, driving tempo. The star of the show is singer Michael Kiske, whose voice is the exact opposite of a death metal growl. He sings in a crystal-clear, incredibly high-pitched tenor, soaring over the music with melodies that you can't help but want to sing along to. The chorus of I Want Out is massive. It's a huge, catchy, and emotional declaration of freedom that is impossible to forget after just one listen. The song is packed with fast, melodic guitar solos and a sense of fun that was missing from a lot of the more serious metal of the time. Helloween proved that heavy metal didn't have to be angry or scary. It could be fun, uplifting, and incredibly catchy. I Want Out became a massive hit around the world and created the template that thousands of power metal bands would follow for decades to come. Helloween had given metal a happy, sing-along anthem. But back in America, a new generation of musicians who grew up on hip-hop as much as metal were about to create a sound that would dominate the end of the century. 11. Blind. By the mid-1992, a lot of people thought heavy metal was over. Grunge had taken over the mainstream, and the old styles of metal felt out of touch. But in Bakersfield, California, a band named Korn was cooking up a sound that was completely new and different. They mixed the heavy, distorted guitars of metal with the deep, bouncy grooves of funk and hip-hop. They tuned their guitars way, way down, lower than any band had before, creating a dark, sludgy, and powerful new sound. This new style would be called nu metal, and Korn was its ground zero. Their first single, Blind, which opens their debut album, was a declaration of war on the old ways. The song starts with a quiet, spooky buildup of cymbals and a tense guitar line. Then, singer Jonathan Davis screams the words, "Arkansas, EU ready?" And the band explodes into one of the most iconic riffs of the decade. It's not a fast riff. It's a deep, lurching, and incredibly groovy pattern that makes you want to bounce, not headbang. The bass is loud and funky, and the drums have a hip-hop swagger. Here's the part that changed everything. Jonathan Davis's vocals. He wasn't singing like a classic metal god or growling like a death metal monster. He was rapping, whispering, crying, and scatting, sometimes all in the same song. He delivered lyrics that were deeply personal and full of raw, emotional pain. It was a style of singing that was completely new to metal. Blind and Korn's first album completely changed the landscape of heavy music. They created a new genre that would bring metal back to the top of the charts and connect with a whole new generation of kids who felt angry, confused, and left out. Korn had birthed a new genre by mixing in hip-hop. At the same time, another band in Europe was mixing metal with a different kind of rhythm, the pounding, robotic beat of industrial music, and they would use it to conquer the world. 12. Du Hast. For most of its history, heavy metal was dominated by bands who sang in English. It was very rare for a band singing in another language to become a global superstar. But in the mid-92nd, a band from Germany called Rammstein was about to shatter that rule. They combined heavy, chugging metal riffs with the pounding, repetitive, and electronic sounds of industrial music. The result was a sound they called Tanzmetall, which means dance metal. It was heavy enough for headbangers but had a beat so strong you could dance to it. Their international breakthrough came in 1997 with the song Du Hast. The song is a masterclass in simplicity and power. It's built around a simple, down-tuned, and incredibly catchy guitar riff that sounds like a giant machine stamping down. Over this, a robotic synthesizer loop plays, adding to the industrial feel. The drums are a simple, powerful, 4-on-the-floor beat that is impossible not to move to. But the most iconic part of the song is the vocals. Lead singer Till Lindemann delivers the German lyrics in a deep, booming, and commanding voice. He doesn't scream or sing high notes. He pronounces the words with a scary level of precision. The chorus, with its simple call and response of du hast mich, is one of the most recognizable in modern music, even for people who have no idea what the words mean. It all boils down to this. Rammstein became global superstars by leaning into their German identity, not hiding it. They proved that the power of a great riff and a powerful performance could cross any language barrier. And their legendary live shows, full of fire and explosions, turned them into one of the biggest rock bands on the planet. Rammstein had shown that industrial metal could fill stadiums. Meanwhile, another European band was taking a different approach, blending metal's power with the epic, sweeping beauty of a movie soundtrack. 13. Nemo. For years, heavy metal was seen as a boys' club, with almost all the famous bands being made up of men. While there had always been powerful women in rock, a new movement began to bubble up in Europe in the late 90s that put female singers front and center. This was symphonic metal, a genre that combined the power of heavy metal with the grand, epic sound of a full classical orchestra, and most importantly, operatic female vocals. The undisputed kings and queens of this style are the Finnish band Nightwish. By 2004, they had perfected their sound, and they released the album Once, which would make them international stars. The lead single from that album was Nemo. The song is the perfect blend of heavy and beautiful. It opens with a gentle piano melody and the soaring, classically trained voice of their singer at the time, Tarja Turunen. Her voice is not a rock scream, it's a powerful operatic soprano that sounds like it belongs in a grand concert hall. Then, the heavy guitars and pounding drums kick in, but they don't overpower her voice. They support it. The mind-blowing thing about Nemo is how perfectly it balances its different elements. The song features a huge, sweeping string orchestra, a powerful choir, and a driving metal band, all working together to create a sound that is truly cinematic. It feels like the soundtrack to an epic fantasy movie. The chorus is massive, emotional, and incredibly catchy. Nightwish and Nemo proved that metal could be breathtakingly beautiful and elegant. They opened the door for a whole new generation of fans who might not have liked the aggressive sound of traditional metal, but were drawn in by the epic melodies and powerful female voices of the symphonic style. Nightwish made metal beautiful and cinematic, but as the 2002 rolled on, one band would take all the weirdness and unpredictability of the underground and turn it into a worldwide, chart-topping phenomenon. 14. Chop Suey. By the turn of the new millennium, nu metal was the biggest thing in the rock world, but many of the bands started to sound the same. Then, from Southern California, a band of Armenian-American musicians called System of a Down came along and threw a musical wrench into the whole machine. They were one of the weirdest, most unpredictable, and most brilliant bands to ever hit the mainstream. They mixed metal, punk rock, hip-hop, and traditional Armenian folk music into a sound that was completely their own. In 2001, they released the song that would make them superstars, Chop Suey. It's one of the strangest songs to ever become a massive hit. It starts with a gentle, acoustic-style guitar intro before exploding into a frantic thrash metal verse with singer Serj Tankian rapping lyrics at a ridiculously fast pace. Then, just as you get used to the chaos, the song completely shifts gears into a huge, soaring, and beautifully melodic chorus where Serj's voice becomes clean and emotional. The song's structure is completely insane. It zips back and forth between quiet and loud, fast and slow, angry and sad, often in the space of just a few seconds. The lyrics are famously bizarre and hard to understand, adding to the song's mystique. What people miss is this key detail. System of a Down's weirdness was their strength. You never knew what was going to happen next, which made their music incredibly exciting. Chop Suey was nominated for a Grammy and was all over the radio and MTV. It proved that a band could be unapologetically strange, political, and musically adventurous, and still achieve massive commercial success. They brought a healthy dose of pure, artistic chaos back to the forefront of heavy music. System of a Down brought brilliant weirdness to the top of the charts. But as metal moves forward in the 21st century, a new wave of bands is combining technical skill with powerful grooves. all while carrying a message for the future.